Thundercats had a rhythm you could almost set your Saturday morning to. Lion-O calls the Sword of Omens, the Thundercats rally, Mumm-Ra comes up with some over-the-top scheme, and by the end of the episode, order is restored. Even the danger felt safe, the villains lost, the heroes smiled, and the kids could go back to eating their sugar-loaded cereal without a second thought. But in the third season, something strange slipped through. An episode so bleak, so heavy, and so relentlessly destructive that it felt less like a cartoon and more like the end of a Thundercats world. It's called The Last Day, and it's one of the only episodes in the entire series that feels like it could have been pulled from broadcast for being too much for kids. Today, we're going to break down exactly why, scene by scene, this episode stands apart and why it still hits harder than almost anything else Thundercats ever did. And if you want to watch it for yourself, I've linked the complete Thundercats DVD collection in the description. It's the only way to see The Last Day in all its apocalyptic glory. Also, if you enjoy these deep dives and want to help keep them coming, you can drop a super thanks right here on the video. Every single one helps me keep digging up these lost, shocking moments from the cartoons you grew up with. And trust me, after this breakdown, you will never look at Thundercats the same way again.
1,000 years more, 5,000, you cannot defeat me.
It all starts with Mumm-Ra at his absolute lowest point. No master plan, no grand theatrics, not even his trademark cackling confidence. Instead, he's desperate. The once terrifying sorcerer who spent seasons terrorizing the Thundercats is now reduced to standing before his dark masters, the ancient spirits of evil, like a condemned man awaiting judgment. And these aren't your average cartoon villains. These are literal nightmare fuel, ghostly figures entombed in glowing coffins, with booming, echoing voices that sound like they're coming from somewhere far deeper than the Black Pyramid. They've always been cryptic and menacing, but this time, there's no riddle, no drawn-out warning. They're done with him. They hit him with an ultimatum that feels less like a challenge and more like a death sentence. You have one day. Destroy the Thundercats or be destroyed yourself. This isn't Saturday morning villain banter. This is an execution order. And here's where the episode takes its first shocking turn. Instead of panicking or running off to concoct another scheme, Mumm-Ra does something chilling. He accepts without hesitation. He doesn't even ask why. He just demands more power. The ancient spirits oblige, but this isn't his usual ever-living transformation. This time, it's grotesque. His body mutates, his muscles bulging to inhuman proportions, jagged armor materializing like shards of dark metal, and his face twisting into something far more animal than human. His eyes burn with a new feral light, and his voice drops into something that sounds less like magic and more like pure rage given form. It's the kind of transformation scene that makes you lean forward as a kid, not because it's cool, but because you're not entirely sure if you should be watching it. And then comes the moment that cements just how far gone he is. In a single act of self-destruction, Mumm-Ra destroys his own Black Pyramid from inside out. For casual viewers, it's easy to miss the weight of that moment, but the Black Pyramid wasn't just his lair. It was his fortress, his source of power, his anchor to the ancient magic that kept him immortal. Watching it crumble is symbolic. The Thundercats equivalent to the Death Star detonating before the final battle. It's Skeletor torching Snake Mountain. It's like watching a king set fire to his own throne, smiling as the flames consume everything. I don't know about you, but it freaked me out as a little kid watching this. It's not strategy, it's not necessity, it's a message. Mumm-Ra has stopped caring about everything except total destruction. From this point on, the stakes aren't just high, they're final. From that moment on, The Last Day stops feeling like a regular Thundercats adventure and turns into a full-scale visual onslaught. The second Mumm-Ra steps outside, the world itself seems to recoil in terror. The ground shudders violently, like the third Earth is trying to shake him off its surface. Towering volcanoes erupt in the distance, vomiting fire and ash into the blood-red sky. Rivers boil, entire mountainsides crumble away in jagged landslides. And then there's the color shift. a sudden plunge into deep, almost hellish tones. The comforting greens and blue of the Thundercats world are gone, replaced by oppressive reds, blistering oranges, and the heavy blacks that swallow every inch of the screen. It's like the planet itself has been dragged into something from some other dimension, one where hope doesn't exist. This definitely wasn't your typical Saturday morning cartoon peril. Usually, destruction in Thundercats was over in seconds. A wall collapsing, a harmless laser blast, maybe a toppled tree. Quick, clean, forgettable. Here, the devastation is prolonged. We linger on villages splintering into rubble. The camera sweeps slowly over massive chasms opening in the earth, swallowing forests whole. There's a weight to every shot, like the animators wanted you to feel the loss. For kids watching in the 80s, these weren't just flashy background effects. This was environmental annihilation. It felt like the entire ecosystem of Third Earth, every mountain, every forest, and every creature was being erased in real time. And just when you think it's all spectacle, the sound design hits you. The bright, triumphant hero music is gone. In place is this low, droning hum that feels like it belongs in a disaster film, not a cartoon about colorful cat warriors. It doesn't just fill the silence, it seeps into it, making every second heavier. It was the kind of world-ending tone shift that you would feel in your chest. And yet, the destruction was only the beginning. Because what Mumm-Ra does next doesn't just target the land, it targets the Thundercats themselves in a way they've never faced before. Mumm-Ra's rampage isn't random. All the destruction, all the chaos, it's leading somewhere. Because for all his newfound power, he knows one truth. Take out Lion-O, and the rest of the Thundercats will crumble. So he starts hunting. The episode does something brilliant here. It slowly isolates Lion-O from the others. Panthro is across the planet, trapped in Collapsing Canyon. Tigra is holding back a tidal wave threatening to wipe out an entire coastal village. Chitara is deep in the forest racing to save animals from a wildfire. One by one, the team is pulled away, each dealing with their own slice of Mumm-Ra's manufactured apocalypse. And then there's Lion-O, all alone. The landscape around him is eerily still, the air thick with ash and heat. The colors are muted now. Scorched browns and dirty grays replacing the fiery palette from earlier. You can almost feel the silence pressing in until Mumm-Ra appears. Not with a blast of magic or dramatic speech, but like a predator stepping out of the shadows. His movements are slow, deliberate. He knows there's nowhere for Lion-O to run. The confrontation is quick and brutal. Lion-O barely has time to raise the Sword of Omens before Mumm-Ra unleashes a spell so heavy, so crushing, it turns him to solid stone mid-strike. 1 second, he's a warrior in battle. The next, he's a frozen statue, sword raised, eyes wide, every muscle locked in place. And here's the part that really sinks in. Lion-O is conscious. He can see, can hear, he just can't move. He's forced to stand there, completely helpless as the world continues to fall apart around him. Talk about scary. Am I the only one who has had nightmares about this being me before? I know you might be wondering, so where are the rest of the Thundercats? Still scattered, still fighting their own losing battles. And with every second that passes, the sun inches closer to the horizon. Because once it sets, Mumm-Ra's temporary godlike power will vanish. The entire episode becomes a race against time, but the odds of anyone reaching Lion-O in time feel impossibly small. It's tense, it's claustrophobic, it's the kind of setup that makes you lean forward wondering, will they get to him before the sun disappears? Or will this be the day the Thundercats finally fall?
Come on, Thunder Kittens, I'll get you!
The moment Lion-O is sealed in stone, the tone of the last day shifts again. The fast-paced destruction slows to a crawl, but not in a way that gives you relief. Instead, the tension becomes suffocating. This is no longer about Mumm-Ra blasting apart landscapes or chasing his enemies. Now, it's a waiting game. The camera keeps cutting back to Lion-O's frozen form, the sun hanging in the sky like an executioner's blade. Each time we return to him, the shadows have grown a little longer. The heat from the day is giving way to the cold of the evening, and in the background, you can hear the low, ominous hum of the score, almost like the planet itself is holding its breath. The rest of the Thundercats are still out there, but they're fighting a losing battle against the clock. Chitara is trapped beneath fallen debris. Panthro's Thunder Tank is half buried in a landslide. Tigra is stranded on the wrong side of a crumbling bridge. Even Snarf, usually the comic relief, is caught in a scene that plays uncomfortably straight, desperately calling for Lion-O with no answer. The genius of the episode is that the tension isn't coming from what's happening to Lion-O. It's from what's not happening. He's early still. The Sword of Omens is just out of reach of his transformation call, and Mumm-Ra knows it. He circles the stone prison like a wolf around a trapped animal, occasionally leaning in close to whisper things Lion-O can't respond to, taunting him, promising that when the sun dips below the horizon, there will be nothing left of the Thundercats to save. And the sun keeps sinking. Every cutaway makes you hyper-aware of that dying light, the warm glow creeping toward the edge of the screen, a visual countdown you can't stop watching. You start to wonder, will the rescue come at the last possible second? Or will we actually see the unthinkable happen? Because the way the episode is playing out for the first time in Thundercats history, victory doesn't feel guaranteed. And that's when The Last Day delivers its most shocking move yet. An ending that refuses to give you the comfort you're expecting.
En unos momentos el ojo de Thundera será mío para siempre, muchacho.
If you thought regular Mumm-Ra was scary, Last Day Mumm-Ra is pure nightmare fuel. This isn't the crackling sorcerer we've seen 100 times before. This is Mumm-Ra stripped of his theatrical posturing, amplified into something primal and monstrous. His voice is deeper now, gravelly and guttural, every word vibrating like it's being dragged across rusted steel. There's no smug banter, no gloating monologue. When he speaks, it's short, sharp, and dripping with venom. And when he doesn't speak, he roars. Not a cartoon villain laugh, but a feral, animalistic bellow that makes the air feel heavier. His attacks are different too. Normally, Mumm-Ra fights have a kind of mystical flair, bursts of magic, flashy illusions, conjured beasts. Not here. This time, he fights with brutal, unrelenting physicality. Every movement is purposeful and punishing. He doesn't just knock down walls, he tears through them like paper. He doesn't just strike at his enemies, he slams them into the ground with enough force to rattle the camera. You can feel the weight behind every blow. There's one scene in particular that shatters a long-standing rule of the show. Mumm-Ra storms the Thundercats' lair, their home, their sanctuary, and rips part of it apart with his bare hands. The walls splinter, the ground shakes, and for the first time in the series, the lair feels vulnerable. It's a violation on a level no other villain had ever dared to attempt, and it sends a clear, chilling message. Nowhere is safe anymore. But the darkest moment comes when Mumm-Ra turns his attention back to Lion-O. Still frozen in stone, unable to speak or move, Lion-O becomes less of an opponent and more of a trophy, something for Mumm-Ra to play with. He circles the stone prison slowly, dragging his claws over the surface with a screech that sounds like nails down a chalkboard. It's the sound of deliberate cruelty, the kind that makes you squirm. Then, leaning in close, his voice drops to an almost intimate whisper as he promises what will happen when the sun fails you. The words are chilling, delivered not for the audience's entertainment, but for the sheer satisfaction of tormenting his helpless prey. It's a scene that feels almost too intense for the target audience, less cartoon villainy and more psychological horror. And just when you think Mumm-Ra has reached his peak of intimidation, the episode takes one more step into territory Thundercats had never experienced before. A step that makes the final moments of The Last Day feel like the point of no return.
¡Tenemos compañía!
The final minutes are burned into fans' memories. The sun dips lower and lower. Mumm-Ra, standing tall, prepares for his victory. The other Thundercats fight their way back, but it's too late. The screen fills with red light as the sun touches the horizon, and we fade to black. No triumphant music, no Thundercats ho battle cry, just the eerie question, did they survive? The next episode doesn't even directly address the events in the same way you'd expect. That gap, that lack of closure. is part of why this episode stands out so much.
Holy Thundera, look!
Mumm-Ra, bigger and uglier than ever.
In the mid-1980s, the idea of a cartoon episode being banned was rare. Saturday morning shows were carefully designed to avoid anything that could spark outrage. No graphic violence, no heavy political messaging, and certainly nothing that could leave kids genuinely disturbed. The formula was simple: keep the tone light, make the stakes high but safe, and always hit that reassuring reset button before the credits rolled. But The Last Day didn't just bend those rules, it all but shattered them. The destruction in this episode wasn't quick or stylized in the way most cartoon peril was. It was prolonged, detailed, and unsettling, lingering on entire landscapes being torn apart, villages reduced to rubble, and the environment itself reacting in terror to Mumm-Ra's unleashing power. It didn't feel like a fleeting backdrop to an action scene. It felt like the camera was making you watch a world die in real time. Then there was the shift in power dynamics. For nearly the entire runtime, Mumm-Ra wins. Not just in a he's ahead for now kind of way, but in a way that makes it clear the heroes are barely holding on. This wasn't the usual dance where the villain gets the upper hand for a few minutes before the tide turns. This was a sustained, crushing dominance that made it feel like the Thundercats were truly outmatched, something children's cartoons almost never allowed. The psychological weight of the story made it even more intense. Trapping Lion-O in stone for most of the episode wasn't just a plot device, it was a horror setup. The hero wasn't simply in danger, he was conscious, aware, and completely powerless, forced to watch the destruction unfold with no way to stop it. It replaced the thrill of an action sequence with the dread of a ticking clock, stretching that tension to the point of discomfort. And when that clock finally runs out, there's no neat resolution. The episode ends without closure, without victory, without that final beat of safety that kids in the 80s had been trained to expect. The credits roll not with relief, but with uncertainty, and for many young viewers, that may have been the most disturbing part of all. It was a tonal swerve, a leap from toy commercial fantasy into something bordering on disaster cinema. In an era when most parents wanted cartoons to be bright, cheerful escapes, The Last Day was the opposite. Bleak, oppressive, and unwilling to hold your hand. And while it did make it to air, you can easily imagine how, in the wrong market or with the wrong timing, this could have triggered the kind of parental backlash that got episodes pulled from rotation entirely. And yet, as unsettling as it was, that edge, the very thing that made it feel too much, is also what has kept this episode burned into fans' memories for decades. But there's one last thing about The Last Day that doesn't get talked about as much. A subtle, almost hidden detail that might be the boldest move Thundercats ever made. And when you notice, the entire episode takes on an even darker meaning. So, what do you think? Was The Last Day a masterpiece of high-stakes storytelling in a kids' show, or a huge overstep that risks losing its audience entirely? Let me know your take in the comments. If you want to rewatch it, I've linked the complete Thundercats collection down below. And trust me, watching this episode now as an adult makes it way more intense than it ever felt back then. And if you enjoy these deep dives into the forgotten, darker corners of your childhood cartoons, hit like, subscribe, and drop a super thanks. It keeps these breakdowns coming and helps me dig up even more moments that might make you go, wait, they aired that on Saturday morning? Because on Third Earth, sometimes the end of the world happens before breakfast. See you next time.